In the summer of 1957, the Nevada desert became a place where the United States tested the limits of power, secrecy, and human life. A place where the ground shook, the sky burned, and the truth was buried under layers of classified ink. Operation Plumbbob wasn't just another nuclear test series. It was the moment the government crossed a line that would haunt generations. 29 nuclear detonations, spread across 4 months, each one bigger, hotter, and more experimental than the last. Officials called it research, a patriotic duty, a necessary step in the Cold War arms race. But behind the official language, behind the staged photographs and carefully crafted press releases, was a reality far more disturbing. Because these tests weren't just explosions in the desert. They were experiments on people, on soldiers, on families, on entire communities who never volunteered. At dawn, young troops were marched into trenches, barely trained, barely informed, told to crouch down, cover their eyes, and wait for the flash. When the bomb detonated, the sky turned white. The heat hit their skin like an open furnace. The shockwave rolled over them, lifting dust, shaking bones, and leaving many stunned and disoriented. Some soldiers described seeing the bones in their hands as the flash passed through them. Others felt the heat burn their faces even from miles away. Then came the order that still haunts veterans today: stand up. Advance toward the blast. They walked toward a rising mushroom cloud, toward radiation they couldn't see, toward danger they didn't understand. The military called it combat readiness, a way to prepare soldiers for nuclear war. But the soldiers knew better. They knew they were being used. And while troops were being exposed on purpose, civilians were being exposed by neglect. Or worse, by design. When the winds shifted, fallout drifted over towns across Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. Tiny particles of radioactive dust, falling on rooftops, settling on playgrounds, coating fields, and farms. Children played outside as the fallout settled on their clothes. Families drank milk from cows grazing on contaminated grass. No warnings, no alerts, no protection. The government insisted everything was safe. They said the fallout was minimal. They said the tests were controlled. They said the public was not at risk. But the numbers told a different story. Cancer rates spiked in downwind communities. Thyroid disease, leukemia, birth defects, entire families struck by illnesses they couldn't explain. Ranchers watched livestock die by the thousands. Burned skin, internal bleeding, stillborn lambs. The government blamed poor animal care. But ranchers knew what they saw. They watched the fallout drift over their land like a silent storm. Behind closed doors, scientists documented everything. Radiation in soil, radiation in water, radiation in bone. They tracked the fallout plume across multiple states. They knew the risks, they knew the consequences, and they buried the reports. As the years passed, patterns began to emerge. Clusters of rare cancers, unusual birth defects, illnesses appearing in families with no history of disease. Doctors in downwind towns noticed it first. Too many thyroid problems, too many children with leukemia, too many young adults dying before their time. But when they raised concerns, they were dismissed. Told it was coincidence, told it was unrelated, told to stop asking questions. Meanwhile, veterans who participated in the tests began to suffer their own health problems. Skin cancers, organ failure, radiation-linked diseases that appeared decades later. Many filed claims with the government. Most were denied. They were told there was no evidence, their exposure caused their illnesses. It wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that declassified documents finally revealed the truth. Operation Plumbbob had exposed more Americans to radiation than any other nuclear program in U.S. history. The fallout plume stretched across multiple states. Millions were exposed, not just soldiers, not just ranchers, but ordinary families living ordinary lives under an invisible cloud of contamination. The government eventually acknowledged some responsibility. Compensation programs were created, but money couldn't undo the damage. It couldn't bring back the lives lost. It couldn't erase the suffering. And it couldn't change what Operation Plumbbob represented. Because Plumbbob wasn't just a test series. It was a turning point. A moment when the pursuit of nuclear dominance overpowered the value of human life. It showed how secrecy could be weaponized, how science could be twisted, how ordinary people could become collateral damage in a war they never fought. Today, the Nevada test site still sits in the desert, silent, scarred, a restricted landscape of craters, twisted metal, and radioactive soil. Tour guides describe it as history, a relic of the Cold War, a reminder of what once was, But for the families who lived downwind, for the soldiers who marched toward the blast, for the communities forever changed, it isn't history. It's a wound that never fully healed. Operation Plumbbob was more than an experiment. It was a warning, a lesson written in fallout, in sickness, in silence, and in the lives of people who never had a choice. And its legacy still lingers in the soil, in the stories, and in the shadows of a desert that remembers everything.